I think we are going to start. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start greetings. I'm going to say hello to you all. I'm Daniel Goldin, the proprietor of Boswell Book Company.
Bookseller of the world.
Well, I'm going to tell you how many days we're open, which is 4,121. And then please tell your friends that the book is available at Boswell. You can buy it by phone or you can buy it through our website. So tonight's event is a very beloved author, Gail Tsukiyama. I will tell you that some of you might have seen Jane Glazer talking earlier. Jane is a longtime bookseller at W. Schwartz, Next Chapter, and Boswell. The Samurai's Garden has been on her rec shelf pretty much continuously for more years than I'm allowed.
560 years.
560 years.
And going.
Thank you.
And
going. Gail Tsukiyama is also the author of Women of the Silk, and she has won the Academy of American Poets Award and the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award. Her new book, just to quote Jane, is already one of Jane's favorite books of the year. Anything that's coming later, they've lost out completely. For this event, Gail will once again be in conversation with the amazing Jane Hamilton, who has written books from Book of Ruth to Excellent Lombards and many even just as excellent books in between. We are very grateful to have the two of you in conversation. Take it away.
I have missed you, Daniel.
So I think how we're going to start, right? We've been given our marching orders from the amazing Daniel Goldin, which is that Gail's going to talk, do a brief summary of the book, and then you're going to read a little bit, right? And then we will chat.
I thought we would break Daniel's rules. That we would do opposite. That we would say, what is this book about? Daniel said I had to do an elevator pitch, but we were discussing what an elevator pitch was. And I think in marketing terms or advertising terms, it's like a 25-word description of what your book is about. There was no way I could do that. I kept trying to write 25 words and it wouldn't work. So I'm going to read you just what I finally put down. And then I'm going to read you the very beginning from the book. And then Jane and I will jump into our conversation. The Color of Air tells a story of a close-knit community of Japanese immigrant workers whose families come to Hilo, Hawaii for jobs on the sugar plantations in the mid to late 1800s. The novel covers 6 weeks in 1935, while one of the island's 5 volcanoes, Mon Aloha, is erupting. Just as Daniel Abe returns from the mainland after 10 years away. I don't know, does that make you want to read it? But you know what's happening, all that seismic energy that's going on underground is actually within each of my characters about to erupt. You know, I mean, that's the simplest way for me to say it. It came to me because I wanted to write about a community, and I wanted to write about Hawaii, and I wanted to write about how Hawaii has become the blended community that it is today. And that's what started the entire idea of writing about Hawaii at this period of time, because I realized that at this period of time, there was really, Mauna Loa was erupting for 6 weeks. And I began to think of what happened during the 6 weeks and who was there and how did they deal with this? And that's usually how stories come to me. Again, like with Samurai's Garden, Jane G's favorite, it was, what did this young man do when he arrived in Tarumi, Japan? And it kind of follows that same kind of structure in a way, because this young man is returning after 10 years in the mainland back home again, only to find out that there have been many secrets kept from him about his beloved mother who had died 2 years prior, and her great love, his uncle Koji. But the best part for me to write this book was writing about this community of characters that I kind of grew to love. The Hilo aunties, these strong women that kind of ruled the Ruths in that community. But it was a chorus in the end. It's a chorus of voices of all these people that came and developed this community, and the splendid community that has remained what we see as Hawaii today, even though there are no longer any more sugar plantations on the islands of Hawaii. So I'll stop there, and I'll just read you a very short piece from the very beginning. And it's when Koji, Daniel's uncle, is going back to his mother's house before Daniel arrives. It's called Mon Aloha, November 21st, 1935, sorry. Chapter 1, Mangles. The sky threatened rain as Koji Sanada approached the green bungalow, where the pungent scent of rotting mangles mingled with a hint of smoke. The bitter remnants of the pre-harvest cane burning that drifted down from the surrounding plantations. He knew it all too well. Sugarcane had been his life since his family first arrived in Hilo, Hawaii, by way of Osaka, Japan, in 1895, along with all the other immigrant workers who had flocked to jobs on the island's sugar and pineapple plantations. Koji had been 10 years old, the older of 2 children, and the only son. He had immediately embraced the wildness of the island as his own, so different from his traditional Japanese upbringing. Along the way, the 3 years his parents had been contracted to stay before returning to Japan had turned into a lifetime. Koji walked up the dirt path to the house he knew so well. It was here on the Big Island, near the growing community of Hilo. He had found a new home at the Puli plantation. Along with years of back-breaking work, toiling under the hot sun, the wind and rain, the tremors and quakes, and it was here on the island of 5 volcanoes that he'd also found Mariko Abe. He paused to look around Mariko's yard now and felt a dull ache at having let her down. The garden, always her pride, was wild and overgrown without her. He meant to come pick the mangoes and take them to Nori at the Okawa fish market. But once again, time had gotten away from him. He continued up the path to see her beloved mango tree, planted by her grandfather, was now empty of fruit. It had been wet and muggy all week, and the moist ground was heavily blanketed with leaves and rotted fruit, only the dark seeds of the few fist-sized mangoes still recognizable. It always amazed Koji how quickly the earth could reclaim its own. Another tremor underfoot shook Koji from his thoughts. The island had been restless with waves of slight tremors for the past 2 months, and he worried that they foreshadowed something bigger and stronger. So far, nothing had come of them, but the island's history said otherwise. It's just the island hiccuping, his mother used to say, to coax the fear out of his younger sister. Koji hoped it was nothing more now that Mariko's son, Daniel, was finally coming home from the mainland after more than 10 years of study. The last time Koji had seen him was during his mother's final months. Since her death, time had played tricks on him, moving both too fast and too slow without her. He couldn't help but feel as if part of Mariko was returning to him with her son, reawakening long-buried memories. Koji walked to the woodshed where Mariko kept her gardening tools. He quickly cleaned around the tree before going up to the house, where he was certain to find Nori, making sure everything was ready for Daniel's return.
Thank you, that's wonderful. That's beautiful. I have many questions about that passage itself, but I want to start by saying that that Gail and I have had the privilege of working with other writers once a year with our friends. We've gathered in some spectacular place with Gail, Jane, Elizabeth George, Karen Joy Fowler, and Nancy Horan, and we just do our work for a couple weeks, and then it's dinner time, and then we play cards and silly games all night, and then repeat. So that's been a great privilege. But I have to say that for many years, Gail has been working on this book, and there has been a period during every year that I have witnessed her working on this book. And this was true of your last book too, where you said, you know, I got this kid up a tree and then I don't know what happens. And like, I got to make something happen. And with this book too, you, it seemed, you know, now in my thinking, like there were years where you were saying, well, there's this volcano and, you know, I got to make something happen. And I have to say that Elizabeth George, our friend who writes, you know, police inspector kind of wonderful, amazing, rich with incident and plot twists, you know, 700-page books, looks at us so-called literary authors and is like, what are you even talking about? What do you mean you don't know what happens next? What's wrong with you people? You can see her thought bubble. So I'm just wondering if you would sort of go through your process in terms of, okay, so you knew, I think from the beginning that there was going to be a volcano, and then and then what happened?
It was only a 6-year thought process. I don't know if I can remember that far back. I mean, as anybody who writes knows, and probably anybody who's a good reader like all of you are here tonight, this evening, it's always one step forward, 18 steps back. And I think what Jane is trying to say is once a year, we're in this one place together when we can talk about anything and everything, dealing with the writing process, because we've all gone through it and we're all consistently going through it, and we're all bitching about what's not working, or I just threw out these pages, or I have to start over again. I think the older I get and the more I write, I find myself starting over again, Jane. I think that's one of the reasons why I keep saying one step forward, 2 steps back. I originally thought it was a tsunami that was going to come and wipe out Hilo Town.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
I just had this idea. Well, what I did is I had this idea. The idea of the natural beauty of the islands is so important, and was so important when I was thinking about it. Environment is so important to how the community lives, and how it shapes the community, and how the community shapes the land that they're on. It's very spiritual. There's a whole natural God kind of mythical sense to being on the Hawaiian Islands. And I wanted somehow to bring that out, you know, beyond the erupting volcano. I wanted the whole idea of the environment and what we're doing to our environment today, you know, and what they've always believed in, and how the earth is precious, and how Pele, who is the goddess of volcanoes, is the one who is going to stop the lava from flowing when she's ready for it to stop, you know, not from outside forces to come in and cause it to stop. So, you know, there were all these things you're finding out as you're researching, you know, and I fortunately and unfortunately do a lot of research with my books, because I'm always writing back in time to a certain extent. And so I'm researching, and as I'm researching, I'm finding out things. Oh, I didn't know that. Ooh, I can't write that because this is happening, or this hasn't happened, or what. So I find myself going back a lot, you know, going back and retooling and then moving forward again. And when I decided that the tsunami wasn't going to work, because first of all, I think we had another friend who was writing about a tsunami at that time. And I said, damn it, she wrote about the tsunami. I've got to write about another natural disaster.
Because there can only be one tsunami book, of course.
Well, yes, because you don't want 2 tsunamis happening at the same time. So I said, okay, she's got that tsunami down. It's time for me to rethink this. And then in my research, I discovered that there was this volcano eruption that lasts 6 weeks. And I thought to myself, well, you know, there's so much perfect about this structurally. Mm-hmm. It's 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. It bookends the storyline. You know, I don't have to worry about well, of course, you say that. You don't have to worry about what happened before or after, but yes, you do. You have all the backstory. You have all the history of these characters in the community. So it's all there. But how do you frame it within the 6 weeks became my big challenge for this particular book. Mm-hmm. You know, because I jumped in right in 1935, right when the volcano erupts. And I knew that I had all the backstory that I wanted to tell of almost every single character. And that's what made it difficult. It wasn't one or two characters that I thought were going to be my main characters. I think as I began to write, they all became important characters to me. I wanted all their voices heard in one way or another. You know, so that meant writing them as a community within the community. Does that make sense? You know, that their stories had to tie in together as the book moved on and as this volcano was erupting. And so that's why it was such a back and forth process, because of trying to tell all the stories within the 6 weeks with all the backstories I had, and then realizing, well, you throw in a couple of ghost stories, you can go way back in time and explain a lot. You know, and it doesn't, as you will know, nothing comes easily. Nothing comes right away. We are certainly not Elizabeth George. We can't churn out an 800 book a year in the same way, because all our characters start from the beginning again. You know, when you have a mystery and you have the set characters.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's why it was always good to see all of you and say, I have to start at the beginning again. But, you know, when I say that, it's not throwing everything out. It's throwing out things that no longer work, but keeping those grains that do work, and that eventually, hopefully, they will grow into something.
Did you know from the beginning that you were going to be writing about the sugarcane industry? And did you know that, you know, well, I know that you weren't thinking you were writing actually topically, but the fact that you're writing about immigration and the fact that these immigrants are really enslaved people by the management, in that sense, the book feels very topical. And I just wondered if as that evolved, or maybe that was in part of the kernel of the book, if you were aware of how of the moment it was going to seem.
No, I think you're very, you know, I mean, I think because I started the book 6-7 years ago, there was interest. It was my personal interest to write about the immigrant situation back then and how they had blended in and become part of the United States in the end. I knew of the issues that were happening. Certainly 6 years ago, we had the same kind of problems. They just weren't pushed to the front burner as much as it is now. I didn't realize, I was speaking at another virtual event and somebody had asked the question, well, how did you tie this all in with the fact that now we're quarantined and we can't leave and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I think that sometimes as writers, we're just very lucky that we're writing about themes that go through history and keep returning and repeating. I think I've done that more so in other books where they seem to cross over World War II at one time or another. And it was this thing, the more I research again on quote unquote war, the more I realize we have not learned anything. We keep repeating ourselves, we go back, we do the same thing. And I think it's that if you choose specific themes that you start writing about, that there's that tendency for them to keep returning, you know, historically. And if you're lucky or unlucky, timing wise, that they show up again. And I just think that I want to say that I purposely waited 8 years for a book to get published because I knew it was going to coexist with the time that we are now. But no, you know, I mean, I think I was just very fortunate to pick themes this time around that fortunate or unfortunate, that has kind of crossed over to what we're dealing with now.
Well, I mean, you could say that the eruption of the volcano and the looming disaster that it presents is a metaphor for the virus. I mean, you could say that you meant that all along.
I did.
I think, you know, in that section that you read, just that sentence, the sky threatened rain as Koji Sanda approached the green bungalow where the pungent scent of rotting mangoes mingled with a hint of smoke, the bitter remnants of the pre-harvest cane burning that drifted down from the surrounding plantations, just that sensual, visceral, the sense of smell, and the ominous feeling of that sentence, and the smoke and the bitterness and the rain threatening. I mean, did you, and then the rotting mangoes, did you go there, and or is all of this, or did you read letters, or how did you access just the vividness of the sensory details?
Well, one, I have a poetry background.
Yeah.
Right? So that's always been something that the use of language and lyrically setting up a scene, I think it comes a lot from the poetry background. The other thing is I have been to Hawaii many, many times. So, one distinct thing you feel as soon as you step foot on the islands are the smells, the scents, the tropical flowers, the heat, the type of heat it is. It's a very wet kind of, kind of heat. There's just things that invade your senses almost immediately. If any place was, I don't know, a cornucopia of things to write about, it's Hawaii. I was more frightened that I would not be able to get what it felt like during a lava flow. And then Kilauea decided it was going to erupt, and it stayed flowing for months and months on the Big Island. And I had a writer friend who said, I really have to write this thing for the Smithsonian. I'm going to go do an article, and please come. You need to research. The lava's flowing. And I thought, I usually research after I'm done with the first draft. Then I jump in a plane and I go to China, or I go to Japan and I see a sumo wrestling match, and then I come back and I put it into the manuscript, or I see what I need to change. In this particular time, well, the eruption could have ended any day. If I was going to go, I had to go. So we had gone, and we biked up to where the flow was coming down and actually falling into the ocean. And it was an amazing experience, because that's something, you could see it on YouTube. And I did a lot of that. I watched things on YouTube. I read, I went into the archives at UH on the island of Oahu and read all these interviews with plantation workers, and all that you could get from that kind of research. But to actually experience the lava flowing, that was something I didn't realize I was going to be able to do that close up.
Wow.
And afforded me that scene in the book, that feeling of, this is what it's like. This is when you feel that hot heat coming at you. This is when the smoke, blinds you and you can't see any longer. This is when you feel the earth move because it's flowing down and lifting up. So it was all those kind of things that I was so lucky to have Kilauea erupt when I was writing the book. And again, it's nothing, it's just that kismet kind of thing where you're just really lucky that you have this opportunity to experience it while you're writing it.
Uh-huh. I mean, this is maybe a naive question, but were you in danger being that close to it, to the flow?
There was a certain place where you had to stop, that you were held back there. I didn't always listen.
You were held back by physical barriers?
Yeah,
or
there were rope barriers in which, people were not supposed to go past. And to the most part, I stayed behind the barriers, and you got a wonderful view of what was going on. It was far enough away that, it wasn't going to endanger you in the same way my book has it, because they were in a different part. They didn't have people watching over them.
Yeah.
But there is the temptation, let me tell you, because you're thinking to yourself, I could get a little closer, nothing's going to happen. How about just 3 feet more, 3 feet more? You want to do it, but then, you come to a point where, what if this decides to drop? Or what if it changes angle or something happens? So, we pretty much stay behind the barriers with a little bit of sneaking a bit here and there.
So I think you've been thinking in a certain way of setting a book on Hawaii for a long time, long before you wrote this book. And this is your first book in Hawaii, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I ping pong back in my
know.
cultural heritages.
I
right?
know your cultural heritage is remarkable.
You know, when you're blended, it really works because right. You know, I think part of the reasoning is when I'm researching for a book, I stumble upon other things that I really want to write about. And it's not looking for it. It's just suddenly you're writing and you're reading and you're thinking, oh, this is such good stuff. I wish I could use this for a book. But because there was a long interval between this book and the last book, I naturally gravitated toward Hawaii as being the next book. And again, it was my dad was Japanese from Hawaii. He didn't bring any kind of Japanese culture to my brother and I growing up. He always brought more of the Hawaii culture. We went to visit his family and with him and my mom when we were young kids. You know, we went to the beach, we ate sushi on the beach, you know, we went to temples there. We did the Hawaiian kind of upbringing in life, but never the Japanese, quote unquote, Japanese type. So in actually writing the books about Japan, I learned a lot about what it meant to be Japanese. And I just felt like, you know, Hawaii was this place that I hadn't really looked into in terms of my own culture, you know, my own background of it, other than going to the beach. And that's, I think, it's always that kind of curiosity that leads me to write a book, something that fascinates me enough that I can stay with it for years. You know, and be able to write the book through a long period of time. And certainly Hawaii was something that I felt I didn't know a lot about and wanted to explore more.
Well, I mean, I think that you are very fortunate in terms of your having so many different cultures in your personal background to explore. You've your Chinese mother, your Japanese/Hawaiian father, and then your American experience too, which, you know, might make someone feel schizophrenic, but you seem to have been able to absorb all of what that is and explore it at different times. And I think that's...
Well, I think actually why I was lucky is, first of all, growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which in itself is a melting pot of cultures. But not only that, being raised in one particular culture as opposed to saying, you have to be Japanese, you have to be Chinese, you have to go to Chinese school, you have to go to we never had that problem. We grew up pretty much in the Chinese culture. You know, we celebrated all the Chinese New Years and all the festivals and all the things and we didn't do a lot of the Japanese ones because my father wasn't from Japan. You know, so I think it's less schizophrenic because of that, you know, that we weren't pulled in different directions. We grew up pretty much the American kids, you know, just having culturally the background of being Chinese. You know, so I think that, well, that's what probably has led me to kind of want to know more about the other cultures.
Well, I guess for some reason it just seems richer than your average WASP, which would be moi, exploring, you know, the English, Irish, and German features of my heritage, which I barely even know. So, so I admire you, and I am in awe, and I think you've explored all these things in really interesting ways. I've been thinking a lot about your experience because I recently read a profile of Maxine Hong Kingston in the New Yorker, and I know that you know her, and I just, you know, it's been said that she, as the writer who first brought kind of Asian American culture into all of our consciousnesses, actually changed the American culture with that book, The Woman Warrior. And I just was wondering, if you feel that was she a mentor even before you knew her, or did you experience her at a certain point and your head exploded, or what? And when did you read her?
No, I mean, I haven't read the article in the New Yorker. I have it. There was just so much going on, and I've been wanting to.
But you don't even need to, because you lived it. I'm just saying.
Oh no, I first read The Woman Warrior in high school, as I recall, and I do remember it being the first book about Asian mythology and
Mhm.
Asian culture.
Mhm.
And I have to agree, I have to say, I was fascinated. So if you were saying, did her book mentor me? I would say yes. I mean, I would say that she was the first one. When I could think logically about the whole idea of writing and storytelling and all that, that brought that culture to, I think, the greater world, or at least the Bay Area where I grew up in. I hadn't read anybody before then that brought it in that way. I think she opened the door academically. I think she was taught in schools. Kids read her early on. I don't know if she made a big impact. I mean, of course she's made a big impact because she's still through the years, but I'm talking economically, in New York, in the publishing world. And that didn't happen until Amy Tan, who had swung open that door. So I would say that Maxine definitely, in terms of culture and myths and looking at Asia differently, she definitely is the godmother of all of that for me. And then later on, of course, it was Amy Tan who swung open the doors economically for Asian American writers to be published. But certainly Max is a character. You've met Max, and I mean, so we never talk about myth and all these kind of things, and we're usually laughing and talking about other things. So it's always beyond me that there's these two separate people. The person who actually swung open this door about this is Asia also, and this is what it is to be Asian. And this is strong women, Asian mythical characters. Read this and you will learn, kind of thing. So the Max I see in daily, when I see her in daily life, and it's a very different kind of Max. So she does feel like one of those Hilo aunties I'm talking about in the book.
Yeah, I love the Hilo.
Yeah, they not necessarily have to be people that you see every day, but they are those people that somehow have graced your life. And was the joy of writing about the Hilo aunties. I think more than anything in this particular book. I mean, it starts out where you think it's about these two male characters, but it really, for me, in the end of the book, became all the female characters, to a large extent. And I think it's just through history, it's just having culturally, everybody's your auntie, whether they're blood relative or they're not blood relative. But aunties are usually somebody who has left some kind of lasting mark on you, one way or another, who always has your back, who has somehow added to your life. And that's why it's like all those Hilo aunties went into these 4 Hilo aunties. And that is the joy of it. That really is the joy of writing, when you can make that happen.
Yeah. If this was a book event where food was going to be served, based on your novel, which the food is described so lovingly and again in such vivid, sensual detail, but what would Daniel Goldin have cooked for you based on this novel, and Jane G?
Okay, do you know that one of the things that they've done for me with this particular novel is have me in this book thing called Cookbook Book Club. Have you ever heard?
Oh boy.
Cookbook Book Club. Okay. And I was supposed to write this thing about, a menu of what you would be eating, from my book. So Daniel and I would start with a very chilled Well, I gotta go Chardonnay. Okay, we'll have a nice Chardonnay. I'm not going Mai Tais. I'm not going the fruity drinks.
Good.
And we'll probably have some poke, some raw fish marinated with as our starter. I think that Daniel should spend all day in the kitchen making me Portuguese chicken over rice with some mango slices on the side. He's rubbing his eyes like, are you kidding me? I that came from real life, the Portuguese chicken. My aunt used to, when I was young, we'd go over to her house and she'd make Portuguese chicken. And I just love this stuff. And then I realized, a lot of it came from the workers that came from Macau, kind of in Portugal, lent that whole thing to the Hawaiian Islands when they got there, and they made Portuguese chicken, which is like coconut milk, and you brown the chicken, and you pour the coconut milk in, and potatoes and carrots and whatever else you want in there, and you put it over rice, and it's heaven. So that's what.
All right. Well, next year for the paperback, maybe.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is that you quote a song that the workers sing, the Japanese workers sing, on page 14, and my tears stained the sugarcane like rain is the last word, and you just have the image of these workers again, these people who came for a better life and for work, and then they're in really what to us seems like just sort of desperate circumstances with this work. But did you research the working songs that they actually sang, and could you sing us a snatch?
Yes, I did. There was actually a show on PBS that were all about these Hohanas. And these songs that they had created. The only problem was when I had a bunch of these songs, I thought to myself, oh no, do I put a real song down, or do I make up my own Hana song so that I don't have to worry about anything later on? And so I reached back into my poetry background, and I said, I am going to write my own Hana song.
Wow.
It became kind of a compilation of many Hana songs that I had read, through this whole researching process, and thinking about it, and how I would do, getting the rhythms of how they had done it, and kind of putting piecemeal together one that would be my Hana song.
And did they sing them in Japanese?
Yes.
And what does Hana mean?
It means, Jane.
A little ditty.
Digging the dirt.
And are there
which is what, a Hana did. It was usually the women and the younger boys who actually turned the dirt over. When they were beginning to plant again. And you probably know way better than I do, but that's from what I've read, that was what it was, and they just called them Hana.
When I was in college, I studied the songs that the Scottish women sang while they were beating the wool in their sheds, which is called walking to shrink it. Anyway, so there's all these songs that are on tape, and it's like, and they're all singing about men being horrible, women escaping from the prison of being with men and all that stuff, I guess. But I just wondered if are there recordings? Were there few recordings?
Yes, there are.
Wow.
But I'm not going to sing my version of it because you're so much better at it.
Oh yeah, clearly.
It kind of sounds like your version, actually.
Well, I just find that
history, all the women saying the same songs.
Yeah, I know, and we don't really. I just wonder if there's any industry, like I'm guessing in the poultry plants, people aren't singing. They've got their earbuds on, and they're listening to Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga sing "In the Shallows" or whatever. I don't know, but that's a loss. That's a loss that we don't have the singing of the of the people anymore. Okay, I'm running out of my time for questions, but I'm just curious why you chose Chicago as the place that Daniel would run away from the island. What
Because of all of you. I kid not. I kid not when I say that. I have spent some time in Chicago and Ragdale with Jane and other friends who were at the Ragdale Foundation. I know people like Diane Quinn and Carol Newman, who are both here, and all of you. And it's always nice to kind of feel that comfort of another home. So I use Chicago.
Nice. Oh,
there you go. And you know, I mean, to be truthful, my grandfather, I mean, to also be truthful, the other hand is my grandfather came over to study law from the islands, but he was in, I think, my uncle was in Denver, and I can't remember if my grandfather was in Chicago at one point, and that was another reason. So it kind of tied in so many different ways. I knew all of you. My grandfather might have been there. So Chicago, my kind of town.
Did you know that Daniel was a doctor at the beginning?
Did I know?
Yeah. Did you know at the beginning of your
that he would be?
Yeah.
He started out as a lawyer. I am not kidding. But
lawyer, what's the difference?
Doctor, lawyer, everything your mother wants you to be. Your Asian mother. I don't know. I can tell you your Asian mother wants you to be. But you know, I needed something to happen, and the reason why he comes back is that something happens, and it worked better as in the medical field, I should say. For those of you who haven't read the book.
Right.
Was,
well, I feel that we should open this up to our audience, because
yes.
but this was really fun, and if nobody has a question, I have some more things I could say, but.
So we do have a question from Crystal. She wanted to ask Gail recommendations for some authors that she loved of all stripes, and just particularly interested in diverse voices. But what else? We know you love your Ragdale friends. Who else? What else are you reading, and who else would you recommend?
I probably read everybody you read. I love Louise Erdrich. I love her new book. I've gone, actually, when I finished The Color of Air, I had a stack of books, old books that you've probably read a long time ago that I hadn't got to yet. And I've actually gone back and started reading. I just finished The Cat's Table by Michael Ondaatje. I'm reading for the first time Anne Patchett's State of Wonder that I had never read. I'm looking at my thing, The Marriage Plot, all of these books that I hadn't gotten to that I've gone back to read now, and it's like this luxury of being able to do that. I read Olive Again, which I enjoyed and thought was a very good counterpart to Olive Kitteridge. And really thought Elizabeth Strout did a great job. I'm trying to think. Jane, help me. Who else?
Let's see. Olive Again. I haven't seen you for so long that I really don't know what you're reading.
What are you reading?
Well, I loved The Knockout Queen by Ruby Thorpe that came out this spring. And I love, it's nonfiction, but Daniel, help me. Patrick Radden Keefe.
Say Nothing.
Say Nothing. That I thought was the most harrowing book I've read in probably a zillion years. And
Say Nothing. Okay.
Say Nothing. Well, what can I say? I just read Karen Joy Fowler's manuscript, which is about the Booth family. So I've been immersed in all of
Yes, and I just have it in my hot little hand. So that's going to be my next read.
Yeah. So, you know what? Can I just say the book that I also really truly loved that I read recently was, it just came out, Maggie O'Farrell, Hamnet. I loved him. Did you read Hamnet? Daniel?
Hamnet?
No, but Jane Glazer is a huge Maggie O'Farrell
Jane Glazer, did you
fan.
read Hamnet?
She didn't.
She's mute.
It's muted.
Oh, Jane, it's just, no, that was just a really great experience. So,
Jane, would you say a few more words about Knockout Queen? You actually talked me into reading it. So I feel like, and being that we've had, and Chris read it, and the book is a bit of a sleeper. It's not getting the attention we might hope it would get in these times. So just say a few more words. You've got 80 people you can celebrate.
okay. The Knockout Queen is about this girl named Bunny, and she's a very gifted boxer, and the book is narrated by her best friend in high school, who's this gay boy, and so it's a first person narrative, and Ruby Thorpe is a woman, and she's inhabiting the mind of this gay man who is friends with this very tall, very eccentric boxing girl who have various problems. They both have various problems, but the thing about the writing, it's one of those books where every sentence has a pull and is imbued with meaning and beauty, and her observations of the world, I just think, are stunning. And I can't believe she observed that and was able to articulate this thing. And I thought it was riveting and really funny and really poignant. And I just think, I hope that in some incarnation of it, if it's not going to be now, that it'll get noticed, because I thought it was a great experience.
The Knockout Girl.
The Knockout Queen.
Oh, the Knockout Queen. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Ruby Thorpe, on the pub day, in this time that we're living in, because she knew she wasn't going to ever tour or anything, interviewed herself, and it's the little interview is on YouTube, and it's really funny. She's sort of dressed up as, anyway, you just, I don't know how you can find it, but I'm sure that you can.
Question, somebody said that from Jean Ambrose, can't wait to read the book, formerly was a reporter in Honolulu, and thinks about iconic Hawaiian things, and wanted to know if there's any ukulele mentions in the book.
There is a ukulele. It's her father. Remember? I don't know if you've ever. There is a ukulele mentioned in the book. It's Nori's father. And when they're putting things in the box in case they need to make a quick run, she puts his ukulele in there, I think, if I recall. If this is my book, the same book, I'm thinking. So yes, and the funny thing is that my editor was supposed to go to Iceland for her vacation, or summer vacation, I think it was last year. And for some reason, the husband messed up and hadn't renewed their passports in time. So she last minute had to find a place to go, and she was working with me on this book. So she decided to go to Hawaii to see if I was doing it right. So they go to Hawaii, and their daughter, her 9-year-old daughter now, is like entranced with the ukulele. And we were Zooming in at one time, and she said, and look, here's Kira's ukulele. She just loves this, and she is not going to give up till she could play this ukulele, like an expert. So yes, there is a ukulele in my book.
Yay. Will you take it out with a couple more questions before we close?
Well, yeah, Gail, I don't know if you want to talk at all about your alter ego as not only the do-gooding novelist, but the do-gooder in the real world, and your Waterbridge Foundation.
My Waterbridge Foundation. I had to do something during that 6 and 7 years in between the book being finished. I always felt that we were incredibly fortunate. I felt very fortunate to be able to do what I love, which is to write, and to somehow have gotten published, and somehow get these books out there into readers' hands. And when I was young, I wanted to do several things. I wanted to write. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be an archaeologist. And I wanted to join the Peace Corps. Not in that thing, but those are all things I wanted to do. And of course, life takes over and you go in one direction or another direction. And I never did get to join the Peace Corps. But I did write all these books and I had all these wonderful writer friends. And I thought to myself, and I had been doing work with the whole Waterbridge kind of morphed out of other organizations that I had been on the board with before. And it just morphed into this now nonprofit grassroots organization in which we put books and water projects in developing communities. And Jane is one of my writers for Waterbridge, and a lot of the other writers you'll see that's on our website. But what we've done is lately is put a lot of libraries in. And it's a really wonderful feeling to know that a child in Africa, rural Africa, who doesn't have any access to books, we've been fortunate enough to put libraries in primary schools, in junior highs that are already existing and built by the community. And we've come in and they have this empty room. That's the best scenario. And other times we've actually built their libraries and then stocked it with bookcases, tables, and books. We've had mobile libraries in which in India, we had an accountant who, after his day job, rode a moped from one learning center to next with the libraries in his saddlebags and would bring books to each of the learning centers and check them out to the kids. And because he was an accountant, he had this book where every book was labeled and every child who had it to make sure that he got the book back so that he could bring it to the next learning center. So it's all these wonderful things. We have a partner in Pakistan in which this woman has this project called Library in a Box. She puts 100 books into a box and they take it out into the rural areas of Pakistan where they have nothing. They hardly have a school. And the library is in this box and the kids take the books from the box and return them. So there's all these wonderful projects that have come out of this little side thing that I love to do. And so I'm finally, I guess, doing my Peace Corps part that I never got to do before with the help of some friends.
That's terrific. You're the best, Tsukiyama. We love you.
You guys are the best.
So I think that about wraps it up. And thank you for being on the line. And Daniel, thank you for organizing this. And thank you all for being here. And Jane, G, for your enthusiasm. And Gail, as always, for your wonderful work and your great, good self.
Oh, well, let me also then thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Jane G, the love of my life. Thank you, Jane H, the other love of my life. Thank you all of you who I know and don't know for reading the books, for coming this evening. It's lovely to be with, I can't wait to the day that I can be with you in person again.
That'll be great.
It's lovely to be with you on a screen.
I'm just going to go close out with my benediction, which is Jane Glazer's recommendation for Color of Air. I'm not going to read the whole thing because you don't have an hour, but I will say that she wrote that Ms. Tsukiyama creates a remarkably soulful portrait of richly drawn characters who, in the face of uncertain times, show the strength, wisdom, forgiveness, and enduring love that will embrace the heart of every reader. One of my favorite books of 2020. We need something like that right now. We're so grateful for this book. Thank you for the Color of Air. Jane, thank you for being the most wonderful conversation partner. And Gail, continued success. And we're thrilled to have you. And thanks to all of you for coming to our event. We wouldn't have a virtual bookstore without you. Hope to see you at another one.
Okay.
And hope to someday see you in the store.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Bye.